In my last video, I went through my film scanning evolution and how I settled on these, the Valoi easy35 and easy120. Today I'm going to walk you through what they are and how I use them, showing you the settings I use to camera scan my film negatives. As the names imply, one is for 35mm negatives and the other is for 120 film. Both units consist of the same basic parts, with the main difference being the size to accommodate the different size negatives. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to show you the initial walkthrough on the easy35 because it's smaller and easier to handle. The business end of the unit is an LED light panel that contains a space in front to insert holders for different film sizes, the default being 35mm film. On the back plate is a power dial and another to change the color temperature. In the middle is a plug for USB charging. When you look at the front of the unit, you'll see the default 35mm holder inserted. To change out the holder for a different one, you turn it to the side, put your finger into the notch, and pull it out. If you have holders for other film sizes, this 110 film holder, for example, you simply slide that in and you're ready to go. Your film slides in from the side and then you center it within the holder. Then the film strip will come out this side. I'll show you this process in a few minutes. I also purchased this optional duster so the film will travel through these brushes before it enters the carrier, hopefully getting as much dust off the negatives as possible. Removing dust in Lightroom or Photoshop can be a bit of a drag, though new AI retouching tools make it easier than it used to be. You'll need to remove the duster if you're going to swap out the film holder, but it's as easy as unscrewing and rescrewing in these two bolts. Dust is your enemy here, so when you store this, keep it in a tote or something that will keep whatever is in the room from settling on it and inside it. In the box comes several metal tubes that screw together. You'll connect whatever number of them you'll need depending on the length you're going to need once your camera is mounted, so you can then fill the frame with your negative. For me, it was trial and error to get the right number of cylinders for my camera and lens combination. Once I figured it out, though, I don't need to change it again. This is going to be unique to your camera and lens. These cylinders screw together, and then the far end is inserted into the main unit once you find the right spot, and then you tighten the screw to keep it in place. Careful not to over-tighten the screw. They recommend you use a macro lens. I myself have a Canon EF 100mm f2.8L lens, but you can use whatever macro lens works with your brand and system. To connect your lens to the metal cylinders, also provided in the box were a number of adapter rings to fit most lens sizes. You find the one that fits your lens, screw that on, then screw the metal cylinders onto that. When you're done, the logo should be facing up. If you need to, you can turn the entire unit back slightly so that everything remains flat. If you have any attachments on the bottom of your camera, like this connector for my holdfast harness, I take it off so the camera has a flat surface. It's recommended that you keep this path as straight as you can, so placing it on a desk like this will pretty much ensure that the film plane is parallel to the film holder. You might be tempted to position the whole thing vertically, but if you do, gravity can cause the focus to sag, and you might not have as sharp a result as you otherwise might. Let's get scanning. Clear space to accommodate your setup. You really can do this anywhere, though I recommend an area where it's as dust-free as possible. Turn the unit on from the dial in the back and turn the power all the way up. You'll then change the color temperature depending on the type of film you're going to be scanning. For color negative film, they recommend you turn the dial to its coldest setting, and for black and white film, they recommend setting the dial neutrally white in the middle. If you're scanning slides or color positive film, you'd turn the dial to its warmest setting. The camera settings I'm using are derived from how I'm ultimately going to be processing the film captures. Once I photograph the negatives, I'll bring them into Lightroom and use a program called Negative Lab Pro, which is installed as a plugin. I'll cover that process in a separate video. Between the Valoi and Negative Lab Pro instructions and a great degree of testing, I've come up with settings that work well for me. Your mileage may vary depending on your camera and lens combination, as well as the type of film you're using and how it was processed. Here's how I set up my Canon R5. The camera is set to RAW. I actually use C-RAW. Then white balance is set to daylight. Having a consistent white balance means, depending on the color temperature of the film, if it's all off by the same amount, and you can adjust the entire roll all at once. If you set your white balance to auto, your camera is going to decide per frame what it thinks it's best, which may not be an accurate representation of that particular frame or the characteristics of that particular film stock, and you'll have to color correct each frame individually. I set my ISO to 100, my aperture to f5.6, and my shutter speed to 1/100th of a second. Using your camera to scan your negatives provides a much wider dynamic range than flatbed scanning, unless you have a high-end one or you're drum scanning. For the average working photographer, though, I think this is the best setup we have available. These settings allow me to optimize both shadow detail and highlight detail without clipping. If your negatives are thinner or denser, or if they're predominantly bright or dark, you may have to adjust your settings to accommodate those variables. This is what I use as a starting point, not necessarily what I'll use for every roll of film. I changed the drive mode from my usual single shot to a 2-second timer. This whole setup isn't moving, and 1/100th of a second is enough for a 100mm lens. And I'm using electronic shutter, so there are no moving parts here. Still, I want to be as cautious as I can to not introduce any kind of shake or blur, so I choose to use the timer. For future use, I save these settings to C2 in my menu settings so I can just choose that the next time I photograph negatives without having to reset up the camera each time. Now it's time to insert the film. If you don't have cotton gloves, I think you should get some. As clean as your hands might be, we naturally have oils in our skin which can transfer to the negative. As careful as we should be with our negatives during this process, I've found a certain inevitability to holding them by more than just the edges and kind of manhandling them. I know. The gloves provide a cushion of sorts and will keep the negatives from getting scratched if you do find yourself jostling them now and again. I also use a rocket blower to blast dust off of whatever surfaces I can during this process. I wouldn't use canned air as it's too intense and can damage your film. The film goes in from right to left in the direction of the arrow, shiny side toward you. You slide it through the duster if you have one, then into the film holder. Then you look at the LCD on the back of your camera to confirm placement. You'll want to see the edges of your frame, but not too much black edge around it. If you have an articulating screen on your camera, this makes it a lot easier. I put my focus point on a person's face or other relevant spot and press the shutter release. 2 seconds count down and the camera photographs the negative. You then push or pull the film strip to the next frame, center it again, and take its picture. You shouldn't have to refocus each time, but there's no downside to doing so again. If the film is flat inside the holder, it should be perfectly parallel to the sensor in the camera, and everything will be in focus. Then we have this beast, the easy120. The basics are the same. You have an LED light source, the optional duster, and a film holder that can be swapped out by poking it from one side and sliding it out the other. The default film holder accommodates a 6x9 120 film frame. They have a carrier for cameras that produce a square frame, but I just use this holder and crop down to the edges of the frame once the skin is in Lightroom if I'm using a Rolleiflex, for example. The cylinders are much larger, as is the light source, since 120 film is larger than 35mm film. The hole where you attach your lens is the same size as the easy35, so you can use the same adapter ring if you're using the same lens. It's a little trickier to attach the lens because of the easy120 size, so I stack everything vertically and screw the lens onto the cylinders. Make sure you have a good grip on your camera when you do this. And when you move the whole thing, use both hands to support the camera and the main unit. Because of the weight, either side might get damaged if you don't. There's no internal battery with this unit, so it operates plugged in. You can plug the USB-A into any powered port. I don't have many USB-A ports anymore, so I use this old iPhone adapter and plug it into an outlet. The controls for power and white balance are on this remote, so you just press the appropriately labeled option. Unlike the easy35, the easy120 makes it easy on you and spells out cool for color negatives, white for black and white negatives, and warm for slide film. Then, as with the easy35, you put on your cotton gloves and slide your film in. The duster is slightly further away from the film holder than it is on the easy35, so you might need a little more care when inserting your film. Some film is flatter than others, and sometimes there's a curl to it, so if you encounter a film strip that tends not to lay flat, you'll have to exercise some caution so as not to scratch it when sliding it into the holder. Then the camera controls are identical to what I showed using the easy35. As you can see, this is a pretty quick process. You can scan an entire roll of film in a minute or two, which is significantly better than the hour or so it took me using my flatbed scanner. Given that significant increase in speed, the greater dynamic range the camera affords me over a scanner, and the physical size of the file the camera produces over what my scanner could produce, for me, this is a better system in every way. I hope you found this walkthrough of the Valoi easy35 and easy120 informative. I really like this system. I should point out they're not a sponsor or anything. I just think this is a quality and cost-effective way to capture your negatives so you can work on them on your computer. In the next videos in this series, I'm going to show you how I cut down and store my negatives, as well as a video where I walk through Negative Lab Pro and convert these scanned negatives into positives, making them look like the photographs you'd expect them to look. What are your thoughts on using this system to digitize film negatives? Do you have any tips of your own for scanning film this way or opinions on what I shared? If so, sound off in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your spending a few minutes with me. If you like this kind of video, please like and subscribe. This is Ask a Wedding Photographer. I'm Seth K, and I'm here to help. I don't have many USB-A ports anymore, so I use this old iPhone adapter and plug it into an outlet.